Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, ni hao, buenos dias, heseche, akwaba, welcome, what up though? This is Cafe Melange, week numero 22, supongo, and we continue on. So first, I share a note, a side note, regarding a combo that is convened within the past week, and is shared on this channel. It is a webinar, and for all of the how many viewers see it, official viewers see it at this point, there's a consideration that is shared about me flubbing and fumbling the greetings, and so I recognize that, and I initially consider providing an explanation of that, but it gets rather involved, and I consider like doing a whole session. I'm just talking about the introduction and like interaction, but there are other things to talk about that seem to be increasingly prioritized at the moment. So what I'll say is this: the greetings are extremely important and sacred, and I do my best to honor that and respect that and fulfill the responsibility and the holiness that exists within greeting another spirit, soul. So that's fundamental. That being said, I do my best. I have an understanding of why it is that I do it previously in this past week. But like I said, it's a long story. So long story short, I'll say I'm working on it. And for those who genuinely care, thank you. So that being said, I consider a couple of topics for today. And actually don't have too much notes, too tough today. So one is kind of like a review about discipline, ethical discipline, and kind of delving into that component. Another one is on a little bit of a different topic. It's related, but it's rather different. And I actually consider focusing on the second joint. However, it seems appropriate to save that for another day, God willing. So what I'll say is like a synopsis or a working title for the second joint, which is the beast, the system, the man, and the way. Very charged kind of content and topic, and it seems beneficial before having that combo or before introducing that combo in both, to have a foundation about strength and discipline to deal with the even just the verbal exchange or consideration of that topic, of those experiences that I just conjured. So that's what I do here: share the foundation of better preparing ourselves for that conversation. For that, I'm saying conversation. I'm still here in this joint, kind of sort of soliloquy like, but the nature of the cosmos is collective. So, anyways, I share a joint on discipline, including concentration and focus. So that's what today's joint is about today. Discipline. And like I said, I ain't working too notes. Oh, also don't have the tech thing. Like I ain't got the earphones today, so we're in the elements auditorily. So we're working on the concentration accordingly. It seems as though the audio is functional, so we roll. So again, here we are. This is what it is. I'll start with Jesus. Jesus is of the people and reaches people where people are, heals people where people are, and then gives a formula for dealing with the conditions. So That's his methodology. That's his approach. He's dealing with cats who are afflicted, who are like struggling, being oppressed, and this and the other. He's like, yo, here's what you need at the moment. I'm gonna give that to you: healing, well-being, food for the soul and the body and the mind. But then also like, here it is. But now you gotta like, you are holy. That's what he says basically. You are holy. Um, Now be holy, meaning be righteous. And Jesus says exactly like, it's only until your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the people who are doing the affliction that you're going to experience what you're looking for. So it's not just a matter of like pointing fingers of like who's doing wrong and everything else. It's a matter of like stepping up our game. Um, and when we step up our game, then we become authority because that's the nature. But Jesus like, it's not going to be handed. It's not something that's just given. It's like, you gotta do it, gotta be it. Regardless of whatever anybody else is doing, righteous. So that's what Jesus teaches, righteousness. You are holy, now be holy. So that's where we begin this journey, where people are at, wherever, whatever level, whatever degree of affliction, whatever, whether it's poor, rich, whatever, everybody's afflicted in one way or another. And we're all affluent in a way as well. So now we're going to flip the script a little bit and talk about Buddha. Buddha shares a similar teaching, but in a very distinct way. So Jesus has the Gospels, the Gospel according to the followers of Jesus, the apostles of Jesus. The Buddha has the suttas. And so, like in Abrahamic tradition, particularly specifically Christianity, the Gospel shares stories of Jesus. The suttas tell stories of the Buddha and the conversations that the Buddha has. And the interesting thing is that the Buddha has a different stilo. He's dealing with different conditions. Same teachings of love and truth and righteousness, but he has a different way of sharing it. So where Jesus is a being of the people and speaks exactly directly to the people who are afflicted and goes to the streets and like puts things on its head and undergirds the not undergirds. I don't want to say undermines either, but challenges the hierarchy, the foundations of the hierarchy, the contemporary conventional hierarchy of his day. The Buddha kind of like does some matrix type stuff, and he like goes exactly within it, and he evaporates it from within. And by that I mean this: he's born as a king. He's born as a priestly in the priestly caste, literally as a prince, who like lives it up as a prince. And then he kind of finds out like it's not enough. It's like that's not what life's about, and he leaves that, and he becomes a renunciate, an ascetic, a person walking the earth, much like Jesus. But the thing is, that was the thing back in the day, and it's still a thing today. That's what people do. Live a spiritual life and are known for that. So all that being said, Buddha exactly fits that paradigm that was already established. It's part of the nature of the convention of his day to be an ascetic and to be recognized as an ascetic. Now, my point for this is that his conversations are different though, because where Jesus talks to the people who are being afflicted, like the people who are oppressed, the poor, the afflicted, the sick, and the ailing, the Buddha, a lot of the sutras he's talking with other priests, he's talking with other kings. And he says the same thing, like this is what righteousness is, but his audience is somewhat different. So in one of these stories, he is talking with another a priest, a Brahmin, and he asks the Brahmin a question about like, so what does it take to be a Brahmin? Now, in the hierarchy, Brahmins are supposed to be above Kshatriyas, which is what the Buddha is born into. Siddhartha Gautama is born into the caste that he's born into. So Kshatriyas are the princely caste, which is second, and Brahmins are the top dogs, the number one. So he's talking to this Brahmin. He says, okay, so what does it take to be a Brahmin? So the Brahmin gives a list of five. I'd have to think about what five are. Right, skin color, knowledge of the Vedas and the teachings, wisdom, righteousness, and I think also pretty. He got to be nice looking, so people got confidence in him. So basically, those were the five, and that's what's held by the tradition. Those are the five qualities of a Brahmin. And when a Brahmin has those, oh, excuse me, it wasn't. It was the right color is including pretty. It's not just that it's right birth. Excuse me. The lineage. He's got like there's no scrutiny on his family lineage for the past I think 7 generations, something like that. So those are the 5 qualities: lineage, color, and pretty, um, knowledge of the Vedas, wisdom, and then righteousness. Um, and so those are 5. Now, the Buddha says this then. He says, well, okay, those are the 5 that everybody recognizes as the standard. Now, can a person go without one of those and still be recognized as a Brahmin, still get respect and get recognized and included as a Brahmin? And so the Brahmin replies, well, you know what? If the person isn't pretty and doesn't have the color, he still be accepted. And so the Buddha says, okay, so well, is there any one of those that they can be without and still be accepted? And then Brahman says, well, the Vedas, yeah, and I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm just reciting what the Digha Nikaya says. And the Brahman says, well, I mean, he doesn't have to know all the details and everything else like that. I mean, it's beneficial to know that, but it's not exactly necessary. So the Buddha says, okay, well, is there anyone other than that he can go without and still be recognized? And then so the third one, he said, and he's hold on to this one. He says, well, you know what? I guess we can say lineage. He doesn't need to have lineage per se. And then at that point, all the Brahmins around him are like, oh, now you're going too far. You're tripping. And then the brother says, well, excuse me, hear me out. He's like, if the brother's righteous and he's wise, then, he's legit. And yeah, it's tough to live with 7 generations without being besmirched or whatever else. So, I mean, we have to recognize if the person's living legit with wisdom and righteousness, then that's what it is. And so eventually with reluctant acceptance, there's like a recognition of that. And so then the Buddha says, well, okay then, so wisdom and righteousness, can a person be without any of those and still be recognized as a Brahmin? And Brahman's like, no, that's it. Got to be wise and got to be righteous. And then the Buddha says, you know what? I agree. So basically in that conversation, the Buddha is challenging and alleviating a lot of the frivolous presumptions, perceptions of holiness and distinction of holiness, and focusing intently on what genuinely matters, what is genuinely important: wisdom and righteousness. And then so the Buddha says, or the Brahmin says, well, so what is that wisdom and what is that righteousness? And so then the Buddha continues to talk about what he's learned, and what that wisdom is and what is that righteousness. And so that's where we focus on, that wisdom and that righteousness that Jesus talks about, the Buddha talks about, and that the many different prophets and sages and ancestors of earth talk about: wisdom and righteousness. Confucius shares his maxim. He has a number of maxims, beautiful maxims within the Analects that talk about wisdom and righteousness. And the Buddha talks about, now I continue to learn, and Confucius says that he may not be the wisest man that anybody's ever found, but he'd say people would be hard pressed to find somebody else who's increasingly eager to learn. So I very much that resonates with me. I continue to learn, and that includes learning the Chinese characters and terms. So that includes the term for gentleman. That's the English translation, but it's a specific term that connotes an individual who's just like, I guess today people would say woke, and it's kind of cliche at this point, kind of like ironically played out, but righteous. I'm focused on that. That one's a little bit further classic. Just a righteous dude. And the Buddha, Confucius continually talks about the righteous dude, who he is, what he does, what he's about. All right. And the qualities. And so some of the things that Confucius emphasizes within the righteous brother, within the gentleman, is a knowledge of the songs and a knowledge of rituals as a way of knowing history, teachings, principles, behavior, stories, and additionally, but also in a way that relates with other people, that other people share, songs and rituals. And so those are 2 significant components of wisdom: songs and rituals. And there's Additionally, Socrates on the other side of the continent of Eurasia and the Mediterranean. Socrates, via Plato and the Republic, talks about the importance of stories. We can include that within wisdom as well. And particularly, Socrates talks about both actual stories, the things that actually happen in this life, but also fictitious stories that give us the uh, the flexibility, the imagination, and the expanse to consider life experiences and the lessons accordingly. So Socrates teaches the importance of both factual stories, the legends, as well as fictional stories. Um, and so those are three components of uh, wisdom: songs, stories, and rituals. Um, Songs are pretty much self-explanatory: music, lyrics, sometimes not lyrics, but just the teachings that are conveyed, the stories that are told, the experiences that are conveyed through music, through celebration, through sorrow and wishing. Songs, stories, again, self-explanatory. Um, Tell a story. Now, some people do it much better than others, and that's something I'm learning as well. It's continuing to improve upon, but uh, it's a craft. It's a sacred and from time immemorial craft. But also it's a way of strengthening the bonds within community. Stories. And then the third element, rituals. These are the things that we do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis. Commemorations, connecting with our ancestors, connecting with the heavenly realm, connecting with each other, connecting with our harvests, connecting with life cycles. In addition, these are ways that the wisdom is reinforced and strengthened. Our connections, our relationships are strengthened through these rituals that exist beyond any one person's authority or credibility or will. It's a collective experience, and it strengthens the bonds within the community. Rituals. So those are the three elements of wisdom that we focus on: song, stories, and rituals. Now, righteousness. That's the second tier. So we got wisdom and righteousness, and then within wisdom, I think I did this way, we've got song, stories, and rituals. And then within righteousness, what we can understand righteousness as is just being ethical, just being like fair and legit, uh, just doing what we're supposed to be doing. The Buddha teaches us that there's a threefold kind of um, branches of righteousness. That includes our actions, that includes our communication, and that includes our thoughts. And so it's a matter of being disciplined in each of these three. Um, uh, and there, there are different levels of degrees of difficulty and dedication that's involved in each of these. Sometimes it's very easy to control our actions and compared to what our words are, and sometimes it's easy to control our words compared to what our thoughts are. And so there are different techniques of cultivating our skill and strength in our discipline within each of these things. But those that's how our righteousness is manifested. Um, Actions, words, or communication and thoughts. Um, this discipline includes principles, and I frequently emphasize a fivefold set of principles: honesty, sobriety, veganism, marital fidelity, and ethical economics. Um, and when I emphasize these, I also emphasize that these ain't coming from me. I'm not making this up. These are what are a share from our sages and our prophets and our ancestors. Um, and these share a formula for being increasingly harmonious with in ourselves, with others, and with the elements and the conditions, with all of life um, and the experience within this universe. Um, it is a formula, a methodology, a discipline of coexistence and well-being um, that is shared for thousands of years. Um, And there are different nuances and different elements or different components that are emphasized, but it is a constant guidance of and prescription for healthy living, for happy living within this universe. Honesty, sobriety, veganism, marital fidelity, and ethical economics. I utilize those terms because of contemporary understandings of these. There's both the um, the historic reference to teachings, um, but then there's also enough tangibility and specificity where people say, yeah, okay, I know what that is. Ethical economics might sound somewhat vague, like, okay, what does that mean? Um, what we can do is I'll go through each one a little bit briefly, and I'm actually thinking about like some of this stuff at this point, but there are a few elements I want to include. Honesty, we know that to be just being honest, being truthful, speaking the truth, but honesty goes beyond just being factual or just being giving an accurate rendering of things that have happened in the past. It's a matter of living a truth, a way that we know is right. Um, in the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu says that the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao, meaning that like truth, even the word truth itself, doesn't it's incapable of encapsulating what actually truth is. It's just a pointer to what we know is truth. And so that's what being honest is. In addition, it's not just a matter of saying, well, I did this, I didn't do that. That's honest. I'm being honest. It's a matter of like, well, I did this. Was it the right thing to do? Does it help other people? Is it healing? Amidst the balance of all the positive and negatives of the consequences, is it the right thing to do? So truth isn't just a matter of being factual. It's a matter of being healing and loving. So those are elements of truth. And sharing what we're supposed to share and abstaining from sharing what we're supposed to abstain from sharing. So a person can ask a question and somebody not respond, and technically, I didn't lie. So, yeah, the truth is not lying. That's my way to describe it. Truth is not lying. Truth is love. So truth is God, actually. So there's that. Now, the second joint, sobriety. Some people can see like the common sense wisdom in that, but we can look at just history of humanity and how intoxicants, whether it's opium, whether it's alcohol, whether it's tobacco, whether it's crack cocaine, whether it's heroin or whatever, how these things are utilized as a way of hurting people in a way that's victimless. But it's predatory, it's hurtful, and a lot of it is self-inflicted harm. So it's just harmful, and it makes sense not to do it. So sobriety, it's easier said than done, but it's important to recognize that. So again, I think few people would argue against that like readily and severely. There are many religious people who actually would, but I think it speaks for itself. I think the third one is the one I just had a conversation with a brother 2 days ago on this joint. As I was reciting the same, I think I said veganism. He's like, "Oh, you had me to that." But first, we can just understand veganism is like an uber discipline of nonviolence. So if we can readily recognize nonviolence as a principle, a lot of people I think would readily recognize that. And then we would get into a conversation about exceptions of protecting oneself, this and the other. But we recognize the general rule is not to hurt people, not to kill them, not to torture them, not to injure. Additionally, that's just the general rule. And then when things are stabilized enough, then we say, okay, things are decent at this moment. Let's step our game up and like be increasingly disciplined and not hurting people. And so when we do that, we find that we actually need to kill animals to live. We actually need to kill animals or to live off animal products to sustain ourselves and to like be healthy and well. The answer is no. So again, we can get caught up in the gray area of arguments, this any other. I think the strongest argument, to be honest, is basic. It's not just matter. It's not health. That's not the strongest argument. The strongest argument for consuming animal products is heritage, and our connection with our roots in addition. Um, and we do that. We still honor our heritage. We still honor our ancestors, and not doing the killing and the affliction of animals. But again, that's another involved conversation. But I leave it to speak as itself, and the traditions talk about this as well, explicitly as well as indirectly. The Torah, um, the Gospels, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Digha Nikaya. Um, we can even say the Tao Te Ching. Also, would just be like, you know, it is what it is. If you kill animals, all right, you kill animals. But there are repercussions with that. And if you don't want to deal with those repercussions, then don't kill the animals. And so I think people find when we distance ourselves from that, we actually see how much harm is actually caused, whether it's the environment, whether it's our psyche, additionally our guilty conscience, and additionally, how can we love our dogs and our cats and the birds that are around us, and then kill a cow? There's a psychological disconnect that exists there, and that manifests itself in other behaviors until people are driving around killing each other in accidents and just thinking, oh, it's just what happens. So anyways, I digress. Um, we can do better, and veganism is guidance along those lines. And marital fidelity, this is another one. I think this common sense, only have sex with one's spouse, husband and wife. However, particularly I think in our contemporary experience of society, people challenge that one. I go back into the notion of what's harmful. Um, it's not a matter of being judgmental or condemning. Again, you are holy, now be holy. Everyone is. Um, so it's not a matter of who's going to hell or who's going to heaven. That's not the question. It's a matter of just understanding what the cause and effect is of like treating each other as sexual objects and the degradation that's experienced afterwards, even when it's mutual. It's predatory. It's hurting each other. It's feeding off of each other in an adverse way. And so that's just the bottom line of it. And I ain't speaking from perfection. I'm speaking from learning and experience. And the teachings from the ancients, our ancestors, prophets, and sages. So that I just leave it as that. So then we get into ethical economics. What does that mean? Okay, yeah, be fair. Okay, yeah, don't cheat. Yeah, don't steal. Okay, cool. But we also know, like, again, predatory. Humanity is predatory and feeding off each other, and oppression, where financial, and additionally, it's predatory. And so, ethical economics is just a matter of living fairly, and that's a huge topic right there. But what I'll do is give like a few subcomponents of like categories of ethical economics, like give guidance in terms of what to, how to actually like do that, what that actually is, and how to abide by that, how to live by that, and to thrive from the harmony that's cultivated through that. So I think there's six components of ethical economics that we work with. One is I'll rattle these off and see if I get them all. Native, vegan, um, financial, labor, environmental, and health. I think those are the six. So native is just, again, respecting the relationships, respecting the relationships that we each have with the land that we live on, but also with the native brethren who are from that land as well, because that's part of the nature of harmony. So if we want to be healthy and like be at peace with the food that we glean from the earth, that includes the well-being of the people who are from that land, from that part of the earth. And so we, particularly here in the Western Hemisphere, in the native hemisphere, we have to be at peace with the people, and so we have to look out for our native brethren and making sure that native brethren are genuinely okay in this on this earth. So that's the initial consideration. Second is veganism. Again, we can look at it in terms of psychological health, and avoiding the guilty conscience of the torture and the affliction and the suffering that the sentient beings experience So alleviating or minimizing that, but also environmentally, economically, and additional costs that are enhanced. Environmental, economic experiences that are enhanced through a vegan discipline. So that's the second component that factors into the ethical economics. Third component is finance. So um, not not getting away from loans, getting away from financial indentured servitude and oppression. Fair pricing, how to do fair valuations, how to share fairly, just fairness. That's part of the nature of our well-being. When other people are well around us, because when other people are not well around us, that causes us stress, that causes anxiety, because then we think we have to protect ourselves against what we think they might do to ourselves if they feel like that way. So when the people around us are well, haha, guess what? We are genuinely well, and we're less stressed. Whether we like it or not, whether we admit it or not. So fairness, that's financial, and that's I say financial, specifically focusing on debt as alleviating that notion of like debt servitude, because it's financial servitude. That's one aspect of the fairness, and then the other aspect of fairness is then labor, and providing people fair wages and fair accommodations to live honestly, genuinely within society. So that's the fourth component. Fifth component is environment. Again, being harmonious with our elements, the life around us, um, and minimizing the pollution that we're causing from our exhaust. Um, that's numero cinco. Then the sixth one is healthy. I guess we have to look for ourselves as well as what we're consuming is actually healthy for us. Um, and so, yeah, we matter too. So those are six components of ethical economics and guidelines of do we actually need it, and if we need it, how much should we provide for it, and how much should we be provided for it in providing it to others. So those are the components of ethical economics. That being said, there's some other additional things as I consider the wrapping up of this joint. Wisdom and righteousness. Wisdom, the songs, the stories, the rituals, and the righteousness is the ethical discipline, the way of practicing our teachings and our principles in every facet of our day-to-day behavior, our year-to-year behavior, our actions, our communication, as well as our thoughts, our very thoughts ourselves. And again, they're techniques for strengthening our discipline. Um, One of these techniques is just cultivating patience, because patience is the foundation of all blessings. All the positive things that we experience in life, that we want to experience in life, have a foundation within patience. Um, how would we want to define that notion of what patience is? But I leave it to speak for itself. So the consideration is, how do we get patience? Like how can we be better patient? That's something that we all need, that we all got to have. It's also something that we all can do. Everybody can stack up their patience chips. So I share a formula. I shared it before and I share it now. There's a formula for stacking up patience. It's 3 steps. The first step is be still. The second step is be quiet. And the third step is be honest. So be still. Just whatever you're doing, stop. Just stop doing it. Stop. Just stop. Do nothing. Do nothing. Just stop. Be still. And then the second one is, haha, That's stacking up patience. In that process, we find increasingly healthy posture. We find increasingly healthy breathing. We become increasingly observant. We become increasingly aware of what is honest, what's happening around us, what's actually happening, what should be happening, what's internally happening around us. How are we a part of that? How should we be a part of that? How do we continue to be a part of that? We're applying patience. So that's the formula. And it continues on um, through our rituals, prayer, meditation, our commemorations, our commutes, and additional. Um, and we become increasingly mindful, we become increasingly aware, we become increasingly attuned, we become increasingly harmonious, we become increasingly well, we become increasingly happy, all that. So that's the wisdom and the righteousness and the way. And then we deal with the beast and the system and the man with the way. That's a wrap. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, zaijian, adios, te chakris, sempre nasibu, political friend, one love and peace.